just want to check to make sure everyone can hear me. I have a microphone if it's going to be a problem, but if people in the back can hear me, then I think I'm okay. So welcome. If you've been to one of my board meetings before, you know what to expect, and if not, I'll just kind of give you a quick rundown of what typically happens. So this is your meeting, not my meeting, so I don't usually come with an agenda. I look to the community for what you want to talk about. Today, however, I do have a brief presentation from the City of London. Ed Soldo is going to talk about shift. That will take about 20 to 30 minutes, and he's here to answer any questions. After that, I will kind of canvass to see what topics you would like to discuss, and then we'll just work through those until we finish. The meeting will be taped, but it'll just be to the front. You won't be taped. And if you don't receive my monthly email and are interested to get it, I only send it out once a month. It just has information about what I'm doing in upcoming events. I put a sign-in sheet at the back for that. So I will turn over to Mr. Soldo to do his presentation, and then as soon as he's wrapped that up, I will look for any other topics that we want to discuss, and we'll set the agenda from there. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So as Councillor Ridley's indicated, I'm here to talk about shift, and maybe I'll start off. Who's heard about shift? Okay, that's good. Every time I ask the question, there's still people that haven't heard about it. Shift is the name we've given to our rapid transit initiative. We've been working on the rapid transit initiative now for about a year and a half. We've been doing public consultation since this time last year itself. So what do I mean by rapid transit? Anyone here use the transit system on a normal basis? We have a local transit system. If you go to other municipalities, they have what we call higher order transit. They have things such as subways, they have things such as light rail running, they may have streetcars, they may have bus rapid transit. We are actually the largest city in Canada that doesn't have a rapid transit system itself. So why we're looking at rapid transit is a common phrase that I always talk about. You're all Londoners, you know the city's roadways. We're a city of bridges, rail lines, environmental areas. Those features actually they really do impact how we move about the city. We have limited crossings of the rivers. We have environmental areas. We have the rail lines that delay us as we go around the city. And because of that, we have problems moving about. Going up and down Wonderland on a Saturday, you go to Costco, you know what it's like. So we really have issues with the number of cars that we have on the road, and we can't widen our roadways anymore. There's a few widenings that we've identified in the next 20 years, but overall, from a transportation perspective, we need to do something different, and we need to have a better transit system. So we've been talking about transit for a number of years. We did a transportation master plan a number of years ago that really provided a long-term vision for the city and about how we move around the city. It was called the Smart Moves Transportation Master Plan, and as well as part of our official plan, which outlines how we're going to grow as a city for the next 20 years. A key component of that really is mobility, how we move about, how we grow, how we build the infrastructure in the city itself. So rapid transit is a cornerstone from our master plan. It's a cornerstone to our new official plan, the London plan, and as well, it's a key component of this council's strategic plan itself. We're looking at implementing a rapid transit system in the city, along with complementary land use planning to change the way that we move about the city as we going forward into the next 20 years. Briefly touched upon this, why we're doing rapid transit. We have congestion issues. Our current transit today, it's not reliable. It gets stuck in traffic. It has issues related to service frequencies. We are growing as a city. Right now we're sitting in kind of really in the middle of the Southwest Area Plan, an area that's going to grow substantially over the next 20 years. Our existing ridership is actually quite good, even though we don't have maybe the best transit system as today. We currently carry about 24.1 million riders a year. In comparison to other cities, that's actually quite good. Our modal share on the number of people in the peak hour that use transit is about 12.5%, and our goal is to get to 20%. And as I indicated earlier, we are growing as a city. We're going to be growing in terms of number of jobs and number of people over the course of the next 20 years. We are the largest city in Canada, doesn't have rapid transit. Everyone else has moved to a different form of transit to move people along more efficiently. Number of municipalities in the GTA currently are implementing light rail transit. Mississauga, Toronto's building a few lines. Kitchener-Waterloo is building a light rail transit system. And the key statistic I want to point out here on this slide is the number of riders we have per capita, which number of riders per the people that we have in the city. Our ridership is a lot larger per capita than all those other cities.
Ed,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. Can you explain what BRT Lite is?
I'll give you a brief explanation here. BRT Lite is when they're running a rapid transit system but not in dedicated lanes. They may run the good example of BRT Lite, a really low version of BRT Lite, is the current service that we have now on the 90 and 91. If you use either of those services, you go along Wellington up to Masonville Mall. It's a bus that will run along the road in mixed traffic, may have some priority being given to it at intersections. It's going to run with more distance between stops itself, so it's a higher frequency bus that goes along the roadways themselves. That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. In comparison to those other cities in Ontario, I wanted to use this as an example. Hamilton had an announcement last year from the province that they're going to build a light rail transit system in an east-west pattern in the downtown. Their peak ridership for their corridor is about 2,100. These are actually to scale in comparison to each other. So you can see the length of their system versus the one that we're proposing. The Queen Street Brampton BRT is up in that area. The LRT that's currently being built in Waterloo. If you go to Waterloo right now, lots of construction. It's a massive construction job on their way. They're hoping to be done in a number of years. And so that's their system being identified there. Mississauga Brampton one. This is an old graphic. Since this time, Brampton decided not to go into that. And there is our system in the middle in terms of the span of it and the ridership that we're looking at. So we are obligated, anytime you do any infrastructure improvements in Ontario, to undertake an environmental assessment. It's basically a study that looks at all the impacts of the work that you're proposing. You have to provide a need and justification of what you're doing. You have to look at the impacts of your project from an environmental, social, a financial, an engineering perspective. So right now we're working on that study. It is a very complicated process where you actually design the system and look at all of its impacts. We started the entire process back in 2013 through the SMART moves. There's a number of other key dates identified there. Right now where we're at, we went to council before the holidays and had council approve what we're calling a preliminary preferred rapid transit solution in terms of 2 corridors that were identified in the city for us to go back out to the public and have that discussion. We also identified the technology, and at the same time we're talking to our funding partners at the province and federal level about the system itself. We've had quite a bit of public engagement, just like we're having this meeting here today. We've had over 50 events. We've actually interacted with about 12,500 people. So when you put that number, to in perspective, the magnitude of that, we've been out to a lot of events, had a lot of public meetings, got a lot of public engagement on that. Really using social media to get out and have the interactions with the public. We've been doing presentations to groups like this, the stakeholders, everywhere we can get out and have this discussion and dialogue with the public to gain input, we've been out there. We've had some surveys out. What we really heard from the public is what they want from a transit system is one that has faster travel time. Today, you take the bus, it takes a long time. I always do the search on Google of how long it takes for me to get from my house to downtown, and Google, as you know, tells you what it takes to run, to bike, take transit, and to drive. And unfortunately for me, when I look at my comparison times, I could actually bike there quicker than I can take transit. So that is a problem, right? That obviously there's an issue there. Other issue is frequency. Right now, most of our system runs half an hour. Some are a little bit better. We're looking at providing a service that is a lot more frequent. We're looking at providing a service that comes every 10 minutes. And quite frankly, when it runs every 10 minutes or potentially even 7.5 minutes on one of the corridors, it doesn't matter what the schedule is. You walk out there, you're going to have a vehicle come picking you up fairly shortly. It's about making sure that we integrate the rapid transit with our communities, making them walkable communities. There's concerns about the capital and operating costs. We want to make sure that the coverage is wide enough in the city. Look at minimizing the transfers and some of those other aspects as well. So this is the system, and this board's in the back. And then I would ask that if you like any more information, go to our website. There is some pamphlets in the back that has the website on it. Everything that we put out is on our website. We have videos on there. We have all the boards, all the information that you may like. And I want to explain this graphic. As you know, right now we're in the public library, right about here, off of Bradley, or future Bradley. The rapid transit, it's not two corridors. It's a rapid transit system, okay? And that's something that is really important to understand. It is about changing transit across the entire city to provide good service across the city. The two rapid transit corridors that we've identified on Richmond, on Wellington, on Oxford, Dundas, and connecting those points are really, there's what we call an L, which is the orange a line up there. We would connect Masonville, go down through Western, the various hospitals, go to the downtown, because that is the hub of transit activity within the city. Go out east through Old East Village, go up Highbury, go to Fanshawe, and then in the long-term future there would be extension to the airport itself. That one right now is being proposed as light rail transit. The blue line is proposed as bus rapid transit, and it would connect from Wonderland in Oxford into the downtown and then down towards White Oaks Mall going by the hospital. It's envisioned that all of these would actually run for the majority within dedicated lanes, going back to those things that we heard from the public: frequency, reliability. If they're running in mixed traffic, it doesn't happen. That's what happens today. Those buses get stopped. So we're looking at, for most of those areas, having dedicated lanes. So while those are the two corridors, what I think a lot of people don't know is the majority of our transit buses come all from the outside, from various periphery areas, and they all go downtown. 29 routes or something like that go downtown. It's a radial system. When you put this in, you can remove a lot of those buses that currently go downtown, because they don't need to be on those corridors. Those people will be taking rapid transit instead. So you can take all that service that you have going into the downtown. There's still going to be service going downtown, but you can cut it back quite dramatically, and you can provide better service throughout the entire city. A lot of concerns we hear: run the buses better on Saturday, Sunday, run them earlier, run them later, make them more frequent, go out to the industrial lands. All those kind of complaints that the London Transit Commission hears, you can start to address those in a better manner, more holistic manner, when you can free up the service that you have replaced with rapid transit. And the buses themselves would also then be reoriented to feed into rapid transit, into the rapid transit corridors. So you would take a bus, say from say we're here, you would go across Southdale, jump on a bus at Southdale and Wellington and go downtown, or there would be a complete revamping as well of the rapid of the local service. On this map here, blue is the current local service. That wouldn't necessarily look like that in the future because it would be revamped. But also really key is there's areas like the Southwest Area Plan, which we reside in right here, growing area that's going to be in the next 20 years, a lot of population, a lot of commercial activity going on. It needs better service. Rapid transit corridors don't necessarily go here, they're on Wellington, but it's those green lines, which are really important. Those are what we call in strategic corridors, where the bus service would be highly increased. We would provide transit priority signals at the various intersections to get the buses through. They wouldn't run in dedicated lanes, but you would see bus service that would be enhanced. It could run every 15 or 20 minutes instead of the half an hour it currently resides today. So they would also provide better service for the other areas and feed into those rapid transit corridors.
Excuse me, what did you say is the difference between the purpley blue and the red line again?
The orange,
The orange, okay.
I call it the orange on the LDL line. So the orange will be, at this point, it's been identified as light rail,
Light, okay.
and the blue is bus rapid transit.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And what time would the buses be running until?
That's to be determined, but I would say that there's a number of generators within the city that currently are not serviced by transit. Anyone in the healthcare industry here? No? They usually start the shifts at 7. If you work at the hospital, you don't take transit to go work because buses don't start early enough to get there. So those are kind of things that need to be taken into consideration when you revamp the entire system.
And in case we decide to do just BRT, will the orange lines then become blue lines?
We use them just as for names. It would be the same areas, same locations. Really, the only difference, and I don't have the pictures up here, but if you look at the back of some of those visuals that we provided, the corridors will look exactly the same. The stations will look the same. The lanes will look exactly the same. The only difference is you drop a rail, you put a wire on top, and you put a rail vehicle on it. I think no matter where we get to, end of the day, you want to protect for long-term light rail on these corridors as well, to ensure, 30, 40 years down the line, if the city really, wants to go there, then they can make an easy implementation.
Right. I just want to make sure that just in case that there would be a plan for bus rapid transit for those other orange areas
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
There would be, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the routes themselves, they're what we call technology agnostic. Doesn't really matter, that's the route. And then it's a matter of what vehicle type do you use. So we looked at a base BRT system, a BRT system for everything. We looked at a hybrid, which is what we have chosen as preliminary preferred, and we looked at light rail on the entire system as well. And at this point, the evaluations have come out having the hybrid as the preferred. So it involves 13 kilometers of light rail, involves 9 kilometers of BRT. There are sections of the BRT that difficult to put in dedicated lanes, so we'd be running them in mixed traffic. Projections by 2035, you may recall the earlier graphic was about 24.1 million riders we have currently in 2014. Our goal is to get to 32 million riders by 2035. The cost of the hybrid is about $880 million. And the operating cost is about $11.1 million additional to what we're spending on transit today. Net cost, it doesn't take into account any reductions in the current LTC budget when you take those buses off of the same routes. There's a lot of benefits in terms of travel time savings. It's actually quite substantial. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but when you look at our charts in the back, it provides you with the kind of travel time savings you would have as a transit rider along those corridors. They actually are quite considerable.
I'm wondering what semi-exclusive means. Is that like more like, not subway, what I'm thinking of, in Toronto, the red on the train tracks? Streetcars.
That's more of the exclusive, what you're referring to. Semi-exclusive is they would run mixed traffic with cars,
So they're stopping at every light like the cars do?
but at the intersection, they would have their own lane to get through. So that's why it's semi-exclusive. So when you get an intersection, you want to give them priority to get through that intersection ahead of the cars. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Mhm.
Well, in terms of, so this would get us from the 12.5% mode share to 20%. We have to get more people onto transit. We cannot keep widening roads. We will get to the point that in the city itself where we're just too congested and we won't be able to move around. Large potential here as well in terms of city building. A key component of the London plan is growing inward and upward, especially within the primary transit area, which is where these corridors reside. This will spur development. If you go up to Waterloo anytime soon, you'll see the vast amount of new development that's occurring along those lines. Developers want to be along the rapid transit lines. And residents want to be there because in terms, the live-work relationships and having access to transit's really important for them.
So is that why you have it now, the main lines are downtown, because that's where the population is, with intentions to expand at some point because we're getting busier in the southwest end of the city? With what you just said about that developers want to be on the line that they're putting, our main one now shows that it's for downtown, already the population is there.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking that in the future you will expand out to either northwest London, southwest London.
The London plan aims to have all of the 40, our goal target for the city is 45% intensification over the next 20 years. And right now we're about 33%, but the majority of that intensification is going to be directed into what we call the primary transit area. That's basically where these lines are. So what we want to do is if there's new high-rises coming in to the city, you want to direct them to where it's the least amount of impact from a sewer, water, transportation perspective. You want them to be built along these corridors. So
I think if I can add on to that, I think those developers of those types of buildings are gonna want to be there as well, because that's gonna be a selling feature when people can get from the White Oaks area to work in 8 minutes or less. That's a huge motivation to purchase or live in that area, right? If you're close to transit. So I think it's supposed to work in conjunction. That's where we want people to go, and that's where they're gonna want to be for that ease of access.
the majority of our ridership today goes into downtown, but as the councilor indicated, we have a number of nodes. When you think about the Wonderland, Oxford area, quite a bit of high density there, a lot of potential in the future of building more density in that area. There's the node down at the mall, at the White Oaks, there's a node up in Masonville. There's a number of nodal areas within the city, and what you want that development to occur in those areas.
And it would be easier, I suppose, to read the bus schedules with this kind of transportation system, because it would be less. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because for the very first time since living in London for 33 years, I decided to take my 2-year-old granddaughter on a field trip. We were going to take the bus. So I downloaded the PDF, and from Westmount to White Oaks, that's east-west.
Yes.
No, not on the PDF. I'm going north-south. So I couldn't figure, I actually had to call the lovely person at the transit and say, I think I'm pretty well educated, but I cannot figure out this PDF. I want to go from what are the times, so that should make it easier.
It will, and what you've identified is a key issue that we've heard from the public. We have a system where everything goes into the downtown, so if you wanted to go to Wellington Street, you can't go over. You gotta go downtown and go back out. So that whole system really needs to get redone, and this will allow that to occur. My suggestion to you on your schedule though, use the schedule. Download the app on your phone, it's a lot better.
Oh, I used it one time. I just wanted to go on a field trip, and we got there and back okay, because of the transit person on the other end of the line was quite helpful.
And I think too, as Mr. Soldo said, like, with rapid transit, you won't even need a schedule. You're gonna leave your house and get there and know there's gonna be a bus or a light rail train within 7 to 10 minutes.
And that leads perfectly into bullet point number 2. The stations, they're not gonna be pulled on the side of the road with a little sign that says transit stop, okay? The stations are not gonna be as frequent, because we don't want rapid transit stopping, because then it's not rapid. It's gonna be about a mile apart, and then all the buses will feed into it. But those stations will actually be quite significant. You know, they're gonna be covered, stations closed, similar to what you see in Toronto area.
I was just gonna ask because I'm from the Toronto area and we have the Zoom
Yeah.
bus, and so those bus stations, like you said, they're about a mile apart, but they're covered and they're actually heated.
Yeah.
So I guess I was gonna ask that because London winters are brutal, if they would have a heater button in there.
They'll be almost buildings, end of the day, right? So,
Okay,
and hopefully what we're trying to do is especially in downtown areas, trying to incorporate into the buildings as well, so that it's all covered in that respect. So higher quality stations. There still is impediments in the city. The main one in the downtown being the CP rail line. Running north-south on Richmond is problematic, but the intersection of Oxford and Richmond is even worse, because it's constant, right? It's not just when the train goes through, it's constant. So what we've looked at in that location, and we do have the graphic back there if you want to visualize it, is an actual grade separation where we go under. We looked at all options, moving the rail, going above, having the rail go up, down, having the road go up, down. There's only one option that works, unfortunately. It's going under the rail in that location, and only for transit. If we were to make it wide enough for cars in transit, unfortunately, we'd have to pick a side of Richmond, and it would have to be removed, and that's too much of a social impact. We're proposing grade separation there, and those are some of the other characteristics that I talked about previously. So it's all about improving the system, in terms of transportation, user benefits, savings for all of us. If you're a transit rider, you're going to be able to get somewhere quicker. If you have a reliable transit system in the city, if you're that family that you have 2 cars, but do you really need 2 cars? You might choose not to have that second car and use the transit system for those trips that you may, the second person may take. I'm a great example. I have 2 cars in the driveway. I don't put 10,000 kilometers on either of those cars. If I had a better transit system, it would actually, I would say, get rid of one of my cars. It's about economic development. There is a lot of construction that would occur. It'll help the economy within the city itself. It helps the efficient use of land use in the future. It has environmental benefits. The more people get out of cars, the less GHG emissions we have. And from a social access and mobility, there's a lot of groups in the city that need a better transit system to get around. They can't afford a car. They need a better system to utilize from a transportation perspective. And millennials in general find taking transit as a preferred option versus buying a car. So our council has unanimously supported at this point the preliminary preferred option being the hybrid. We're using that as the basis for all our consultation. It really provides a balanced approach for long-term transportation in the city. It involves a financial commitment of approximately $125 million from the city itself. And it will not occur unless we have a partnership with the province and the federal government. We're looking for them to invest in the economy in the city of London. All of the rapid transit systems you've heard about in Ontario, Hamilton, Mississauga, those ones there are actually being owned and operated by the province. It's 100% funded by the province. We're outside of the GTHA, places like Waterloo. They're funded at a third. So the local municipality comes up with a portion of the capital cost. So our funding is we're seeking a third funding from the province and federal government. We're asking them for about $388 million each to fund the program. The city has put away $125 million. and the majority of that money is being collected through development charges. So what development charges are is every time a new home gets built, a portion of that home, there's a cost within that home, what's called development charge. That goes to fund water, storms, sewers, the roads are being built in that area and across the city. And so a portion of that development charge is being utilized for the funding of rapid transit. So there's about 90% of that 125 million is being gathered through development charges. The rest would be on the tax. Our operating costs are about $11 million a year for this. So that all goes into our contribution for the 1/3, and hence how we came up with the funding for the federal and provincial government.
So
Province-
this money, is this if you built it today, or is this the projected amount that you will need when you only start in 20 to 25?